Identity and Access Management, Part 6. Let's look at IAM workflow. It has 4 distinct sections: joiner, mover, leaver process, self-service access request and approval, role mining and role modeling, identity reconciliation and remediation. So what is joiner, mover, leaver or JML process? Well, the JML process refers to the complete life cycle of a user's identity and access within an organization. It covers joiner, mover and leaver. Joiner, a new user, it's employee or contractor or partner is added to the organization. Mover is a state wherein the user's role or responsibility has changed during his tenure. And leaver is when the user exit the organization and access must be revoked. The JML process ensures that access is granted securely, updated as responsibility evolves, and revoked promptly upon departure, all in alignment with least privilege, compliance, and security policies. Let's look at the flow. From a joiner perspective, the goal is to seamlessly and securely onboard a new user with its key activities involving creating a digital identity, which includes a user ID, email, unique ID, then assigning roles based on department and job functions, then provision access to apps, systems, folders, and then enroll in MFA, VPN endpoint management, then log all actions for auditing. Example, a new sales executive joins, he automatically is provisioned access to CRM, Teams, shared folders, and emails. Movers. The goal is to adjust access as the user role or location changes. The key activities involves reassessing roles and access entitlements. Involves revoking access not relevant to the new role, or assigning new access and privileges as needed. It also involves enabling a time bound or project based access if it is a temporary access, and then record approvals and changes. Example, an engineer transferred to cybersecurity. We revoke the DevOps access and grant access to security dashboards and tools. Levers. Here, the goal is completely and securely remove access when the user departs. The key activities involve disabling identity across the system, whether it is AD, Entra ID, or Okta. Then revoke access to all apps, cloud platforms, shared resources, and retrieve assets, could be laptop, tokens, etc., mobiles included, if it is a company provided. Then archive data and transfer the ownership. Then log offboarding action for audit and compliance. Example, a contractor finishes a project, hence account is disabled, access to system is revoked, and mailbox ownership is transferred. Now, why this process matters? Well, from a security aspect perspective, it prevents unauthorized access or insider threats. From a compliance perspective, it aligns with SOC requirement, GDPR, DPDP, ISO 27001 requirement, etc. From an auditability perspective, it provides traceable logs and access records. From an operational efficiency perspective, it automates identity lifecycle events. From an user experience perspective, it ensures timely access without delay or gaps. Well, systems involved in JML workflow? Well, at a minimum, HR is involved, which could be any tool, which could be SAP, Workday, Oracle, etc. From an IAM platform perspective, it could be SailPoint, Entra, Okta, Verify, IBM Verify, etc. From an ITSM perspective, it could be ServiceNow or Jira. From a PAM or endpoint perspective, it could be CyberArk, Beyond Trust, Intune, or any other tool that's either your organization already procured or planning to procure. There are many more in the market. From a directory service perspective, it is Active Directory or LDAP. Do note, this product could be different. You would have a different branded product providing the same services. It could be a freeware. So hence, the idea here is to give you a top level perspective. From a best practice perspective, automate the workflow via IAM. This helps you reduce errors and delays. Enforce role based access. This helps support least privilege principles. Maintain checklist. This avoids missed step during movement or exit. Checklist also helps you to ensure consistency. Just imagine you are a senior guy in the system doing these checks for over a long period of time and you're on leave. Then the next person, if he's a newbie or not so experienced, there is a chance that he might miss few steps. A checklist helps ensure that exact processes, exact steps are followed with the same results. So that's the importance of checklist, and hence maintaining it is critical. Use time bound access for movers. It avoids unnecessary long term privileges. Review the JML effectiveness every quarter at minimum. If you have an automated process, fantastic. This helps aligns with audit and risk controls. In summary, the joiner mover lever process is a foundational security and governance control that manages a user's identity and access from the moment they enter the organization through internal transitions until their exit, ensuring compliance, operational efficiency, and zero trust enforcement. Now, let's look at self service access request and approval. What is self service access request approval? Well, self service access allows users to request access to application, data, or systems on their own without having to raise manual IT tickets. This process is governed by an automated approval workflow which routes the request to the appropriate authority, which could be a manager or application owner, for review and decisions. It replaces slow manual access provisioning with a secure, user friendly, and policy driven experience. From a flow perspective, it typically works like user logs into an IAM portal, whether it could be Okta, SailPoint, Entra, depends on what you are using. Searches for the required application, folder, or systems. Clicks request access. Then the system shows access details, justification fields, and a request duration. User submits the request. Then IAM routes the request to the manager for business justification, or also moves to the app and data owner for security review. Then it goes for a compliance approval. Then the approver clicks either is approved, denied, or it's asked for more information. If approved, access is provisioned automatically. And last, expiration policy and audit trails are applied. So that's how a self-service generally would work. Do comment if there is a different flow or a different concept that you are using in your organization. It might help me or others also to get a perspective. Now, why does self-service access request matter and approval matters? From a security perspective, only approved users get access. From a transparency perspective, everyone sees who requested what and why. From an auditability perspective, it tracks all requests and decisions for compliance. From efficiency perspective, it reduces IT workload and response time. From user empowerment perspective, it improves productivity and user experience. Now, where is it commonly used? Well, access to new tools when the requirement is, that is requesting access for SAP or ServiceNow or Jira. The second scenario is where temporary project requires an access request, that is granting 30 days access to AWS dev environment example, or where privileged access elevation is required, wherein providing example temporary admin rights for patching, or where requesting share folder access. It could be HR related or finance driven, or when it is about license allocation. Example, Adobe Creativity Cloud or Power BI if you need that. Now, what are typical features of a self-service IAM portal? Well, it is searchable catalog and user-friendly discovery for available apps. It has time-bound access. That means auto expiry reduces access creeps. Justification field, it captures the need for access, why you need it in the first place. It has multi-level approval, so there is a clear segregation of duty. It has policy-based restriction, that is, it prevents SOD violation or toxic combination. Then it also has a peer-based suggestion, that is recommended access based on roles of peers, and auto documentation. It logs your decision and access duration. As a best practice, user role templates helps to streamline frequently accessed types. You can enforce expiration and recertification. This ensures temporary access is not forgotten. You can enable delegated approval, so there is a business continuity. You can integrate with IAM provisioning tool. This helps with auto fulfillment. You can monitor any request anomalies. This will help you to detect any abuse or excessive access. Tools, we have quite a few. I've listed 5. SailPoint, specifically useful for access requests sent as a center. Okta, can be used for or is used for access request and workflow management. Microsoft Entra for ID governance. IBM Security Verify for governance. Savint for ServiceNow IAM integration. So, self-service access request and approval streamlines how user obtains system access, providing a secure, auditable and scalable alternative to manual IT interventions. It's a cornerstone for enforcing least privilege, zero trust and compliance in modern IAM. Let's look at steps. This could be your checklist. You can use this as a base reference or you can build on it for sure. Starting by defining the access catalog. You define which app, system, roles can be requested via self-service. Then you ensure only resources that support automated provisioning or workflow approvals are included. You set rules around who can request what, with what justification, and how often. You design approval chains, example manager, app owner, security, if needed. You integrate your self-service workflow into your IAM system. It could be Okta, SailPoint, Entra ID. Then you enable access suggestions based on user, department, title, or peer access profile. Then you set up automated email and dashboard notification for every steps. You apply default time limits for access and ensure auto revocation is in place. You log all access requests, approval, denials, and provisioning outcomes. You need to use a small group to test end to end access requests and iron out any issues at that point. Do not go big bang. Start small and test small first, and then increase your intensity of your testing and the size of your testing. Once you have ironed out all the issues, is where you go again, not as a big bang, but as a step. Department by department, product by product, system by system, roles by roles. You can choose the way you are comfortable with. Yes, the speed of your deployment can be high, but it has to be in small pieces. Test it out, let the user acclimatize themselves, understand the working. Let us see what breaks. But if that is the case, then only a small part get impacted. Then you can fine tune and then go for the next. That's why small groups helps. Provide documentation and training for users and approvers. Make the self-service portal live and accessible to all eligible users. Use dashboard to track request volumes, approvals, denials, and anomalies. Do conduct periodic reviews to adjust rules and improve workflows. Generate reports for audit, compliance, and security review. Role mining. Role mining is the process of analyzing existing user access data across applications and systems to identify patterns and groupings that can be converted into standardized roles. It's like reverse engineering roles based on how access is already being used in the real world. Why do it? Well, organizations often start with unstructured, user specific entitlements. That is, everyone has different access. Over time, this becomes complex, error prone, and non compliant. Role mining helps identify commonalities. Example, all salesperson would have access to CRM plus email plus quota folders. So, role mining helps identify commonalities and turn them into roles for automation. So, it starts by collect the data or collecting the data. Pull access logs and entitlement data from IAM systems, ADs, SaaS apps, database, etc. Analyze their pattern first. Use clustering or algorithms to find users with similar access combination. Then you identify role candidates. Group the entitlements into candidates' role, whether it could be sales executive or so on. Validate with the stakeholders, a very important step. Don't go overboard and take a decision on your own. So validate with stakeholders. Work with business units to review and validate these roles. Create technical roles. Convert them into standardized roles in IAM tool, whether it's Okta, SailPoint, Entra, or anything that you are using. And clean up the exceptions. Highlight the outliers unused entitlements, and find out risky combination and mark them off. This is how you go about with the role mining process. Now, again, what is role modeling? Do note, we discussed earlier was role mining. Now we are looking at role modeling. Role modeling is the design and structuring of roles, either manually or post role mining, to create a logical, maintainable role hierarchy. So, how role mining and modeling fit together? Well, role mining is about discovering existing access patterns from real world usage, whereas role modeling is designing logical, maintainable role and mapping users to them. Together, they transition organization from user based access to role based access control, a core principle in modern IAM and zero trust architecture. Do remember what we discussed in the past video sessions. Our idea is to reach the destination, which is passwordless, but to reach there are steps. This is one step. So you move from user based to RBAC. If you remember the whole cycle that we discussed earlier, this is how you can go about doing it. You can pause here and try to relook at the role mining and modeling, the difference between those two, and we can move forward. Let's look at the components of role modeling. There are business roles, which is aligned to job functions, whether it could be HR associate, finance analyst, and so on. There could be IT roles or technical roles, which is aligned to system levels. There could be entitlements or permissions, specific rights bundled under the role. There could be hierarchical role, which is roles can inherit access from other roles as a manager, including employment role, etc. And there could be dynamic or attribute based roles, that is role assigned based on user attributes like departments or location. Now, what's the benefit? There are few, starting with operational efficiency. It simplifies provisioning and access reviews. From a security aspect, it reduces access creeps and toxic combination. It enables cleaner audit and SOD enforcement. The roles enable policy driven auto provision from an automation perspective. It makes managing access easier across large organizations. Now, there are challenges that we need to consider here. Starting off with overlapping access groups. That's a big challenge. You would have multiple groups who might have roles which would be complementing or also conflicting. So first, you need to normalize entitlement during mining. There could be too many unique roles. You would have cut it into so much fine chops that managing it would be a big challenge. In that case, apply thresholds. Define your thresholds. Example that I've given is 80% of users share the same access. So put up a percentage or that type of category, because that helps you in the long run. Then you would have stakeholder resistance. Well, in that case, thumb rule is involve the business early on and use clear visuals. The business should be able to visualize what you are trying to achieve and what's in for them. Next is entitlement sprawl. Such cases, archive and remove unused or dormant accesses. In summary, role mining discovers the pattern in existing access to define logical roles. It discovers the pattern in the existing access. Whereas role modeling designs and maintain those roles in a scalable and compliant way. They are critical for transitioning to role-based access control. We discussed this, and form the backbone of efficient and secure identity governance. So, summary is important. Mining is discovering a pattern. Modeling is designing to a scalable and compliant way from what we have learned in mining. These go together. Starts with mining, ends with modeling. And output of that is moving towards or transitioning towards RBAC. Let's look at a sample template. You can pause the screen, you can read through it. But basically, this is how a template would look like. You can enrich this based on your organization's requirement. Starts with basic name, type, business function, department, what is the justification of the role, what are the entitlements, what are the applications the staff would require to, what is the eligibility criteria, what's the owner, who's the owner of the role, who's the approver, when what is approved, what is the review frequency, when was it created, who created it, and whether this is active or inactive. So this gives you a top view, and as I said, based on your organization, you can enrich this. The things which might not be relevant, if it is the case, you can take it off. But mostly these are generally acceptable fields. But yes, almost every organization would have additional inputs to this. Do note, every time you add a single line to it, it adds to your workload. Think from a sustainability perspective also. In enthusiasm, we might add 50 fields to capture anything and everything. First question, when do you need it? Will you need it? Is it just in need type of a template, or you have wanted to do a full carpet bombing on anything and everything? Well, you can, but it adds an overhead. Multiply if there are 10,000 movements, people coming in, people moving out, people, vendors and things. So if there are 50 lines and there are 10,000 times of movement, think through how many minutes or hours it will require for the organization. It's an investment of time and energy. You need to balance it, think through. Yes, you always have an option to add fields. Rather than going big bang, go incremental. If there is a field that you notice in your BAU is missing, it could have helped, do go and add it. As part of a change management process, you can always add fields. Okay. But what you don't want to see at the end of a year is there are 50% of field which you never used for last many years or last year. Review it. As you add fields, also review stale records or fields which are not practical. It looks good initially, nice, but it's not having any practical use. Take it off. Reduce the workload, but make it effective and also observe that it is efficient. Let's now look at a comparison between role-based access control, attribute access control, and policy-based access control. We discussed this individually in our earlier videos. We'll pause here and take a stock as to how it compares against each other. RBAC, ABAC, and PBAC. The primary access control mechanism in RBAC is user is granted permission based on assigned role. In ABAC, is based on attributes of user, resources, environment. Whereas in PBAC, it's granted on centralized policies, more refined. As we move from R, A to P, we become finer and finer, more granular control. The decision is based on user roles in RBAC. It's based on attributes when it is ABAC, and it is based on policies. Just to ensure you remember this, remember the R, A, and P. Automatically, you should be able to correlate. Access rules are static for RBAC, dynamic for ABAC, but fine-grained. But then it's also dynamic for PBAC, but rule-driven. The granularity is medium in RBAC, high in ABAC, and very high in PBAC. The flexibility is very high in PBAC, high in ABAC, and low in RBAC. Implementation is easy in RBAC. Little complex in ABAC, but moderate to complex in PBAC. The complexity of the policy is low in RBAC, high in ABAC, and medium to high in PBAC. Best used, PBAC is best used when it is cloud native, zero trust environment, or regulated environments. So if you are in a regulated environment like banking or healthcare or defense, go for PBAC. Achieve PBAC status. Yes, you still have to go through an RBAC and ABAC, but you can reduce the cycle step by step because you have to go through step by step. Directly jumping and PBAC could break systems. Think through about it. So that's how a comparison at the very top looks like. Identity reconciliation. Identity reconciliation is the process of matching and aligning user identity data from multiple systems to ensure consistency and accuracy. Here when we say multiple systems, it includes your HRMS, Active Directory, SaaS apps, etc. The goal is to detect duplicates, mismatches, orphaned account, or unauthorized access across systems. Now, why it's needed? Well, user may exist in multiple systems under different usernames or IDs, or access may be granted without proper HR records or approval. An account may persist even after an employee exists, which are basically the orphan accounts. Or changes in role or department may not reflect in downstream systems. That's why identity reconciliation is required to be done. It should be a mandatory aspect of your governance. It helps you clean up if there are any mismatches, duplicate, orphaned, or unauthorized access is identified. This is one method to identify those. Use cases, well, user might appear in HRM and AD under different names. Possible. First name, middle name, last name. If it is combination is changed, he might be considered as a different user altogether. It's a possibility. But it's the same person. So it's a duplicate entry. An AD account exists without an HR record, which is basically an orphaned account. HR record is when a person comes in, would be taken out when he's moved out. But if there is no integration, when he was initially created, the AD account was also created. But when he moved out, there was no back end integration and the AD account remained as it is, a dormant account, eventually marked as orphan. But that's only possible when you do a reconciliation. You might have access in Salesforce not mapped to the current job roles. Could be because a person might have played a role temporarily and then moved on. Or during allocation, a mismatch would have happened. You can identify this during reconciliation. Or user is terminated but still has cloud access. That means the deprovisioning failure has occurred. Again, this is possible to identify as part of your identity reconciliation. It can be considered as one of the detective controls in your system or your process. Remediation. What is remediation? Well, remediation refers to the corrective action taken after reconciliation reveals gaps or discrepancies. Example of remediation action: disable or delete orphaned account, merge duplicate identity into a single profile, remove excessive or inappropriate entitlements, or trigger recertification or approval workflow, or update user role based on current HR records. Step by step workflow, if you want to look at, it start by data collection. Pull all the identity data from HRS, IAM, AD, cloud app, etc. Anything and everything in your system where identity data are stored or collected. Then do a correlation. Match user across system using attributes, example employee ID, email names, etc. Then do an analysis of the reconciliation. Detect mismatch, orphaned accounts, access anomalies. Then we move to exception reporting, wherein we generate reports for review by IT, security, or app owner. Then we move to remediation execution stage, wherein we take action like disabling or merging or correcting or escalating. Then we do to validation and audit, wherein we verify the resolution, log the changes, and prepare for compliance reporting. So this is how the whole workflow would work. Next is tools that support reconciliation. While we discuss the tools, from a remediation perspective, it helps in to identify correlation, exception management, access review. It helps in reconciliation of HR and AD identities, lifecycle workflow. It helps to connect multiple sources for ongoing reconciliation. It helps in real-time identity visibility and cleanup automation. Well, there are different tools being mapped out, but most of the tools have these features in some combination or another. You can look at what you are using, and if not, what else you might need to fill in the gaps. This gives you a perspective. But also do note, this is not a comprehensive list. This is an indicative list. Generally, these are the ones which are used across many organizations and tested. But there might be new tools, much more efficient, lighter, and much more user friendly. So look at what matters, what makes the most impact for you, what gives you the maximum bang for the buck that you have invested in. Of course, there are free tools which you can also review. Benefits of remediation? Well, it improves security. It helps you prepare better for audit. It provides more accuracy in your life cycle by identifying status, aligns status with HR and organization's role. It helps improve your efficiency and helps you align to your compliance requirement, whether it is SOX, GDPR, DPDP, ISO, or so on and so forth, or whatever compliance requirement you are bounded to. There are challenges. There is incomplete data or attributes. In such cases, use identity correlation rules. If the challenge is shadow IT or external lab, expand the scope of connected systems. If there is resistance from business unit, automate the reporting and show risk of misalignment or over permissioned users. Well, pair with role mining or access reviews. In summary, identity reconciliation is the detection of inconsistency in user account across system. You are reconciling the identity. And remediation is the act of correcting these inconsistencies to ensure secure, compliant, and clean IAM operation. So the first step is reconciliation and second is remediation. Let's now look at a template. Again, this is an indicative template. You can use it as it is, but definitely recommended to look at your own organization and enrich this. Well, this looks basic. Start with these and move ahead and add it to the relevance part. Again, don't go overboard and add 50 in one go. Add in steps, in phases. Could be monthly review initially, then quarterly review. Because as your fields become stable and relevant, you might need a lesser amount of frequency of review. but keep it at a minimum of 3 months later stages. Initially, you might have a higher level of frequency, maybe once in a month, to see fields that were required while you're running a BAU but was missing. Then you can add them. But again, do not go overboard. These are things which add on to your workload. The fields here are exception IDs, which is a unique ID, detected date, detected by whom, system and application related to, users involved, exception type, description, risk level. Now this risk level is to be defined by your policy. What is low in your organization? What is considered medium? What is considered as high? This is a place where you need your expert, the risk team, the business head managing or accountable for these systems, or the department in combination. So if it is a sales department, you need the risk manager of the sales department to come together to define what is low, what is high, what is medium, because that is where you will have this auto populated the moment you select a particular system. It shouldn't be an optional field. It should actually pre-populate, ideally. Otherwise, you end up having a situation wherein a particular exception was detected and you selected it low, so it will go below the radar potentially. Or something which is not so important has been marked as high, then you end up reviewing them, investing a lot of time and energy. Hence, these should be a pre-populated field, but an agreement between your domain head, department head, and your risk managers need to be in place. This is where your risk manager comes into play. This is his area, this is his field. The next is initial action taken, who was responsible team, how was the remediation action required, target resolution date, status, closure, verified, and the logs. Again, log reference comes automatic, should be ideally automatic. Exception should be automatic. This is the system generated so that the numbers are all tracked in a particular sequence. You don't want to lose out on the track. You don't want a manual entry and you miss out a number here or a number there or a code there. Then it's a problem. You have everything in place, but you don't know where to find or how to find it because you have messed up the naming convention. Make this mandatory, but then make it as non-optional. It should be pre-populated ideally so that no human is touching it. It automatically comes out. Next is checklist. How to go about it. First is pull user account and access data from HRM, AD, cloud app, etc. Ensure attributes are correctly synced. Use deterministic or probabilistic matching logic. Is either ID or name and email, that combination, so that you are accurate to the point. Locate account that exists in the system but not in HR or IAM record. Detect users with multiple overlapping account across system. Review if user access aligns with current role department. List account with no activity for more than 30, 60, 90 days. Audit for unexpected admin root access and review privilege. Compile a formal report listing all anomalies found. Engage respective teams for investigation and decision making. Disable, merge, or reassign access based on decisions. Ensure IAM platform reflects all remediation action. Store version control report for audit readiness. Schedule formal review for medium or high risk account. Submit findings summary to internal or compliance or audit leads. Hope this checklist helps. You can pause the screen, look at the checklist, take a note, compare it against your own if you have, enrich if you want it. You can drop those which are not relevant. But if this is your first checklist, then start with what has been given as it is and progress with it. As you move, you learn. As you learn, you enrich it. Then you can knock off, you can add on to one which is relevant for your organization. IAM in regulatory and compliance frameworks. IAM is pivotal to compliance with global regulations like GDPR, wherein data minimization and access control are focused. or HIPAA, wherein rule-based access to PHI is the focus area. User access reviews and segregation of duties are focused in SOC. Unique ID, MFA, least privilege access are core area of focus when it comes to PCI DSS. Purpose limitation and access governance are the core areas when it comes to DPDP Act of India. Let's look at GDPR and IAM, focusing on data minimization and access control. The General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR, enforced by European Union, lays down strict rules on how personal data should be collected, processed and protected. Two key principles, which is data minimization and access control, are directly aligned with IAM practices. If you are interested in knowing more on GDPR, I have a different set of video or series. You can reference that. That might help you get into deeper aspect of GDPR. But for this conversation, it's about IAM with respect to GDPR. So let's go and dive deeper into this. Data minimization. What GDPR says? Well, personal data shall be adequate, relevant and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purpose for which they are processed. Memorize this if required to, but the core objective here is personal data should be adequate for the work that they are purposed for. What you need and what you have got should match, nothing more than that. This is defined in Article 5(1)(c) of GDPR. From an IAM perspective, it says ensuring users have access only to the minimum data required to do their job, no more, no less. So that's from an IAM perspective. Hence, there is a match, there is a relationship between your IAM objective perspective with data minimization from GDPR. What is the technique for enforcing data minimization in IAM? First is RBAC, wherein we grant access based on job roles to restrict unnecessary exposure to data. Then we have ABAC, wherein user attributes are used for limiting access contextually. Then we have least privilege principle, which is ensuring only having permission absolutely needed. Then we have JIT, which is just in time access, which is provides temporary access only when required, then revoke it automatically. Then we have access reviews and certification, wherein we regularly verify who has access to what and whether it's still needed. Then we go into segregation of duty, which is SOD, which is to prevent a single user from accumulating excessive rights that could lead to any abuse. So these are how we enforce data minimization using IAM techniques. Then GDPR has something which is reference to access control. GDPR says appropriate technical and organizational measure shall be taken to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. This is as defined in Article 32 of GDPR. From an IAM perspective, it is ensure only authorized users have access to personal data based on the role, context and approval. So here, role, context and approval defines authorized users. Who are authorized users? Who have a role and the context and their approval in place. Those are authorized users which will or who will have access to personal data. That's from an IAM perspective. Hence, it matches with what GDPR's requirements are. wherein the technical and organization measures. That's how the linkage is. So, how does IAM controls that enforces GDPR? Well, it starts with authentication control, which is strong password policy, MFA, biometrics to validate user identity. Authorization framework, which is about roles, policy, attribute based model to control who can access what. The next is audit logging, which is about tracking who accessed data, when they accessed, and from where for GDPR audit trails. Then it's also about certification campaign, access certification campaign, wherein we periodic check to validate and revoke unnecessary access. Then we have the user life cycle management, which is the JML process we discussed earlier, which ensures access is granted only during employment and is revoked upon exit. Then it's about data access governance, where we restrict access to personal data field unless absolutely needed. So this is how IAM gets linked to GDPR's requirement. So in this, can anything go wrong? Yes. Starts off with excessive permissions. Well, data overexposure could trigger a breach of minimization. Orphan account could be a gap where unauthorized access is also considered as a data breach. Shared credentials, when if it is the case, then there is no accountability and can lead to audit failures. No access loss. If that is the case, then you cannot prove data security, which can trigger off a non-compliance. There is no access reviews, which could be that there are outdated access rights and just hence triggering off a data risk from a GDPR perspective. In summary, from a GDPR perspective, if you look at from mapping, data minimization in GDPR is equal to RBAC, ABAC, least privilege, JIT access, SOD. When it comes to access restriction from GDPR, it's role-based authorization, context-aware access. When it comes to security controls in GDPR, it's MFA, SSO, and password policy equivalent in IAM. When it comes to accountability of in GDPR, the equivalent is access logs, certification, workflow approval. When it comes to data protection by design, from an IAM perspective, these are IAM controls embedded into every life cycle stage. In summary, GDPR compliance isn't just about policies. It's about embedding controls through effective IAM systems that restricts access, reduce exposure, and enable continuous validation of identity and data integrity and rights. You can pause the screen, relook at what's the mapping, what can go wrong, and think through your situation where you stand currently. Let's now look at from a checklist perspective. From a checklist perspective, the assessment question should be, are users only granted access to data necessary for their job? That's your question. If you are a risk manager and if you are doing a pre-audit assessment, this is a question that you should be having with you. And you should be coming out of the meeting or a review with an answer for this. It could be yes, it could be no, it could be I am not sure. If I am not sure, then where or what is required to know about the state? If you still don't get it, then the answer is no. Next question is least privilege enforced consistently across all systems? Is there a automated workflow for joiner, mover and lever? Are periodic access reviews conducted and certified? Is multi-factor authentication enabled for sensitive data access? Is access governed by user attributes and roles? Are all data access even logged and monitored centrally? Are all roles and entitlements formally documented and reviewed? Is sensitive personal data masked, encrypted, or segmented? Are privileged account monitored and access time bound? Or are security events tied to identity logged for incident response? The next question should be, are user accounts deprovisioned immediately upon exit? Or is data usage governed by consent and purpose limitation? The next should be, is third party user access reviewed and validated regularly? And the last question that should be there with you is documentation available for audit on IAM and GDPR control? So that's your assessment question from a audit perspective. If you are an auditor, or if you are a risk manager, or you are a manager who wants to do a check on where your department currently stands. These are the thought process questions that should be with you at minimum. You can add on to it for sure, but these are the minimum questions that should be there with you. And when you start the review, you should end with answers for each one of them. A very clear answer. It starts off by trusting what they say, but should end up with a verification from your side. So if everything is yes, fantastic, then you go for evidence. Take a sample, test out and see whether it is factual. What was said and what's there on the ground, is it matching? Well, I have put up a weighted scoring model on IAM risk assessment from GDPR perspective. If you look at it, the weightage has been already been given. Your scoring should be from 0 to 5. The weight will come from scoring into weighted score. So supposing for data minimization, the weight is 5. Suppose your score is also 5, where 5 is fully compliant. Your weighted score would be 5 into 5. It is 25. Okay. So what's your gap? Well, identify the high risk gap and document the remediation action. This gives you a top view. You can refine, enhance. You can use your own weighted mechanisms. Your risk manager teams would have already used this. Please use that as the base. You can use this as a reference and see if there is anything that can be taken from this table to enhance or enrich. Let's look at a SOD metrics and role risk map. So when you say HR management, that's a business function. The role is HR onboarding officer. Second role is HR termination officer. Is there a conflict? Yes. The same person could add and remove the employee improperly. Split the onboarding and termination duties. So a person need not be the same. Now in this case, data governance. The first one is a data steward and second is a classification analyst, two different persons. There is no conflict. But then your idea is to figure out, are there any segregation of duty conflict? Are there a risk in this space? Basically, using this template or similar templates to cut out or cull out those areas where you have SOD conflicts. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or known as HIPAA. What is HIPAA? HIPAA is a US law that protects the privacy and security of individuals' health information. And what is PHI? Well, PHI, or Protected Health Information, includes any information that can identify a patient and relate to their health condition, health provision, payments for healthcare. Example: name, date of birth, diagnosis, treatment history, insurance info, etc. The rule in HIPAA says HIPAA security rule requires that access to electronic PHI or ePHI must be restricted based on roles and responsibilities, and only authorized personnel should be able to view, modify, or share this data. This ties directly to the role based access control in IAM. So, IAM responsibility under HIPAA, from an access control perspective, it grants access to ePHI based on minimum necessary standards. From an user identification perspective, it uniquely identifies users accessing PHI. From an authentication perspective, uses password, token, or biometric to verify the users. From an audit control perspective, the HIPAA compliance expectation is to track who accesses PHI, when, and for what reason. From automatic log off perspective, the HIPAA compliance expectation is to terminate the session after inactivity to reduce the risk. From an emergency access perspective, HIPAA compliance expectation is to provide break glass access in urgent situations. Now, how RBAC helps under HIPAA? What's RBAC? RBAC means granting access based on job roles. Each role defines what PHI can be accessed, what action can be performed, whether it is view, edit, delete. From an IAM best practice for HIPAA compliance with RBAC defines the role clearly, wherein it maps job functions to PHI access needs. It applies least privileges, wherein users should access only what they need. They use entitlement catalogs, wherein it documents who can access what and why. They perform access reviews, which is validating access quarterly or after changes. It helps terminate access promptly. That's the best practice in IAM, which is deprovisioning access when staff leaves. It's also about logging and monitoring access to maintain audit trails for PHI access, and use MFA, especially for remote or admin access to ePHI systems. Now, what are the roles in from a PHI access perspective? You have doctors, nurse, billing clerk, admin staff, wherein doctor require full access to patient record. Nurse can access to current care related data. Billing clerks only access to payment and insurance data only. They don't need a full patient record. Whereas admin staff, no need for a medical or billing PH. They have no role there. In this scenario, what can go wrong? Shared logins. If that is the case, there is no accountability for access to PHI, and it's a serious violation on from an HIPAA HIPAA's risk perspective. There could be over permission, unnecessary PHI exposure could be triggered. There could be orphaned account, wherein access remains even after the employment has ended. And worse, there is no log, so we are unable to investigate who accessed and who breached it. So these are the things which can go wrong in this space. In summary, when you compare IAM and HIPAA access control, from a HIPAA requirement perspective, you have to limit PHI access to minimum. In IAM solution, we have the RBAC and the least privilege. HIPAA requires to track access to PHI. In IAM, we have audit logging and monitoring, which complements the HIPAA requirement. From HIPAA, it is required to ensure that only authorized users have access. IAM is about identity proofing and authentication, which complements the requirement. HIPAA's requirement is to prevent misuse or unauthorized access. From an IAS solution perspective, you have periodic access review and segregation of duties, which exactly complements what is required from HIPAA. IAM solution has time-limited elevated access with logs, which complements the requirement of handling emergency access from HIPAA. So, HIPAA and IAM, how do you enabling secure access to PHI? Well, HIPAA is a US federal law designed to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of protected health information. It places a legal responsibility on healthcare provider, payers, and business associated to limit access to patient data only to those who truly need it. This principle is operationalized through IAM systems, particularly using RBAC. Now we understand the context of IAM and the RBAC in HIPAA. In summary, HIPAA compliance isn't just about security. It's about trust in how patient data is accessed and handled. And IAM, with properly implemented RBAC, audit control, and user lifecycle management, is essential to enforce this trust. Let's look at from a compliance checklist perspective. Need to check out if you are an auditor or a risk manager of a domain or a management person wants to know how are you aligned to HIPAA and especially the RBAC. This is a checklist that you can use as a reference to start with. To start with, checking out, are all access roles clearly defined and documented? Are roles aligned to specific job functions? Is PHI access limited to minimum required for each role? Is access provisioned automatically based on roles? Does new role assignment go through approval workflows? Is SOD enforced to avoid conflict? Is there a secure protocol for emergency PHI access? Are access role reviewed and certified regularly? Is access revoked automatically upon employee exit or role change? Are role based access events logged? Is MFA enforced for role accessing PHI system? Are authorized access attempts flagged in real time? Are users trained on PHI sensitivity by rules? Your thought process should also be, are access audit logs retained per HIPAA duration? Or are roles modifications tracked and approved? This is a thought process a good risk manager or an audit person or a management should have when you are looking for HIPAA related compliance checks. If you are in this field where HIPAA is applicable for you, this is your checklist that you go with. At least you start with this. Then you can dig deeper based on your unique company's requirement and challenges. But your idea should be you should have at least these answered at minimum. You would ideally know about your situation broadly to an extent of what's there on the ground if you probe your query on these lines. Let's pause here and think through what we have learnt and understood in this part 6 and all that we have done from part 1 till now. So we will pause here and part 6. I would like to thank you for the time that you have invested till now. If you have reached up to part 6, it's a big journey that you have taken. I hope this has been useful for any student of IAM who is just trying to enter, or experts who think that have been valued these videos have brought to your table. Think through. If this has helped you, do like and subscribe. Do share it with your teams so that they can also benefit. If there is an upgrade required on understanding of this subject, sharing this might just help. So do share as much as possible. Definitely do subscribe it so that the next videos when uploaded you get a notification automatically. This is your host Savit Vittal Salian. See you in part 7. Thanking you. Namaskar.